Hi, today we're going to look at some proofs of congruent triangles. For our first proof, we're given that segment AE is congruent to segment CB, segment AB is congruent to segment CD, and that B is the midpoint of segment ED. So we can start by marking that given information on our diagram. AE is congruent to CB, AB is congruent to CD, and knowing that B is the midpoint of ED, we'll be able to say that EB here is congruent to DB over here. So let's get started on our proof now. Our first statement is just our given information. And since B is the midpoint of segment ED, we can use the definition of midpoint to say that EB is congruent to DB. And then finally, we can prove the triangle is congruent because we know that all three sides of one triangle are congruent to all three sides of the other. So that would be our SSS postulate. All right, let's take a look at another one. In number 2, we are given that segment AB is perpendicular to segment BE. Segment DE is also perpendicular to segment BE, so that's going to make angle B and angle E right angles. Segment AC is congruent to segment DC, and angle BAC up here is congruent to angle EDC over here. Again, our first reason is given. Our second reason, angle B and angle D are right angles because of the definition of perpendicular lines. And then for number 3, we can say that angle B is congruent to angle E because right angles are congruent. And finally, we can prove the triangle is congruent. Both of these triangles have 2 angles and one side congruent, but that side is not in between the angles. So this would be the angle side theorem. All right, let's take a look at one more. For this proof, we're given that GK is congruent to ML. Angle GKM, that angle right there, is congruent to LMK, this angle right here. Again, we'll start with our given information. For reason number 2, MK is the shared side between these triangles, so we can mark that. And that reason, anytime something is equal to itself, is the reflexive property. And then we have 2 sides in each triangle and the angle in between, congruent. So this would be our SAS, side angle side postulate.